Chapter 5 The Ancient Automaton. Mikoto Misaka screamed as her blade burned bright, and she hammered her sword against Red-Eyed Zaza's own blade. Her sword was fury, her heart was rage, and her mind was blind anger. She continuously hammered her blade against Zaza as he frantically attempted to block all of Mikoto's blows. His partner went on the attack as well, trying to take on Mikoto from behind as Zaza distracted her, but Mikoto's reflexes were on overdrive. She swung around, twirling her blade skillfully in one hand, knocking back both fighters with her new vicious resolve. "This game!" Mikoto screamed as she slashed a gash in Zaza's partner, chunking his health down to the red zone. "Is a prison that's trying to kill us!" Mikoto tackled Zaza and kicked his legs out from under him before hammering down at his blade with incredible overhead blows. "And yet you choose to help that prison kill us faster! You freaking monster!" Red-Eyed Zaza was knocked back into the ground, his health bar now in the red as well. Mikoto barely noticed as she continuously fought that the rest of the Laughing Coffin group was attacking her. She shoved Asuna and Kirito aside without thinking, slicing and dicing like a demon, not even paying attention as her health began to creep down to yellow, and then down to red. Tears gushed from her eyes as she went on a blind rampage. Her blade was a brush, painting a picture of violence and anger. "Misaka, stop!" Kirito grabbed Mikoto from behind with help from Asuna and the surviving KOTBO members. "Not again!" Mikoto screamed. "Not again!" "Misaka, please!" Asuna yelled. "Snap out of it! You're going to kill them!" That snapped Mikoto out of it. She stopped mid-swing, panting heavily. Kirito put a hand on hers, lowering it slowly. Mikoto could hardly believe what she saw before her. The rest of Laughing Coffin were all knocked to the ground. All of their health bars were in the single-digit red zone. One more good hit could knock them out each. Did I do this?" Mikoto whispered. Well, said Kirito as he and Asuna let go of her. I'm a monster! A monster! Mikoto screamed. "Misaka, wait!" Kirito exclaimed. But Mikoto was already running down the path, tears streaming away behind her. "Her health is low," Kirito said to Asuna. "If she runs into a monster now." "Right, I've got it." Asuna ran after Mikoto as Kirito turned to defeated murderers. "What a beast," Red-Eyed Zaza muttered. "I wonder if that really is that level 5 bitch." Kirito grabbed Zaza by the collar of his clothing and glared at him. "Tell me, right now, what do you know about her? What was it you were griping about?" "Shh, no telling," said Zaza. "Tell Miss Electromaster to remember my name well, 'cause someday I'm going to see her again, and the next time I will kill her." "No, you won't," said Kirito. "You're going away, and we're never letting you out." "Keep thinking that, but this game has to end eventually," said Zaza. "And when it's over, we're all going to be different. We'll all be unleashed upon the world, and there's nothing you can do to stop that." "Misaka!" Asuna called out. It had been hours, and Asuna was fearful that she might never find Mikoto. Night had already fallen, and she knew that Mikoto wasn't dead, because Railgun hadn't disappeared from her friend list. Asuna sat down next to a tree and sighed. Kirito had already helped arrest the members of Laughing Coffin and gone out searching as well. But even he couldn't think of where Mikoto had gone. What had Asuna most worried was how Mikoto had said, "not again." Mikoto had been on boss raids, she had seen people die every floor. She had even grieved for them. But never had anybody taken a blade for her. There was something up. Mikoto wasn't answering her messages, not even from Kirito. There had to be a way to find her. That's when Asuna came across the golden sword lying on the ground. Asuna picked up the static smite. It had to be hers. Mikoto was the only one who owned that weapon in the entire game. Asuna then saw a cave nearby. She trekked up to the entrance and found it didn't go in very far. There was an old open chest where a rare item had once been stored. Mikoto was sitting with her back to the end of the cave. Her eyes were red from crying. One thing the game actually got right was showing a player's emotions. "Oh, Asuna, how'd you find me?" Mikoto said softly. Asuna smiled and held Mikoto's sword out to her. "Oh, I don't deserve that," Mikoto muttered. "What happened back there, Misaka?" said Asuna. "Are you okay?" You're asking if I'm okay?" said Mikoto. "Well, yeah," said Asuna. "Why wouldn't I ask? I didn't think anybody would want to associate with me after I did something like that," said Mikoto. "To tell you the truth, Kirito said you almost acted similar when you thought he died, pushing out of the way of a large monster trap," said Asuna. "You went ballistic and raged through an entire horde of ghouls. It's like when somebody gives their life for you, it terrifies you." "I'm not going to talk about it," said Mikoto. "Yes, you are," said Asuna, folding her arms sternly and sitting down next to Mikoto. "'Cause we aren't leaving this spot until you do." "Fine, I'll sit here till somebody beats SAO," said Mikoto. "Well then, the Flash and the Railgun both just sitting around while everybody else tries to beat SAO on their own," said Asuna. "That's sure comforting." Mikoto looked away sheepishly. "Sounds stupid when you put it that way." "Come on," said Asuna. "Just talk about it. You'll feel better." "I'm not sure about that," said Mikoto. "At least to give it a try," said Asuna. "Look, this is SAO we're talking about. We've all had our fair share of trauma." Mikoto nodded. Okay. I guess it all started after we beat the first floor boss. I met a little girl named Kurami. She was only around 6. And she was scared. She logged on to SAO on her own, and she had nobody to go to. I decided I'd help her, 'cause, I just couldn't leave her. Yeah, many kids who log in alone in SAO are in a tough situation, said Asuna. It makes sense. Yep, said Mikoto. Then, one day, I left her at one of those daycares they have on the first floor. I figured it was a good place for her, since the first floor is full of low-level monsters, and the town is massive, so there's less of a chance for her to run out into monster territory if supervisors ever lost her. A good place to make sure she's safe while I went to clear a dungeon. Then, it happened. What? Said Asuna. Remember the Einkrad Liberation Front? The largest guild in SAO, said Asuna. Yeah, also called the Army. They were formed with some pretty good intentions, but lately they've been a bit out of control. Yeah, said Mikoto. They've been hanging around the first floor, some of the bottom feeder ones who aren't strong enough to clear dungeons, but powerful enough to harass the lower-level children who weren't able to move past the first floor. When the daycare wouldn't pay the taxes they set, they kidnapped a few of the kids and brought them to the den of one of the field bosses that had been defeated after floor 22 was cleared. Mikoto clenched her fist. I hunted them down. I was furious. I beat them down so easily that I had them crying at my feet. But, as it turned out, one of the players didn't feel so happy about me disrespecting the army so much, so he tried to stab me from behind. My regeneration stats weren't very high back then, so I would have died if Kurami hadn't thrown herself in at the last second. Asuna put a hand to her mouth in horror as she imagined a small child throwing herself in front of a sword blade. Everyone has their own reasons for playing solo, Mikoto whispered. Some are beta testers like Kirito, who are judged just because they happen to be ahead in skill. Some just aren't cut out to be with others because they create pain for whomever they meet. When a person sacrifices their life for somebody who's such a nobody that she only remembers her name and nothing else, it's a foolish action in a world full of vultures to eat away at the suffering that rots in the graveyard. I guess it's nice that this is a virtual world. No bodies to clean up and remind us of the pain. Asuna blinked tears out of her eyes and grabbed Mikoto in a hug. Mikoto stammered in surprise. What are you doing? Let it out, Asuna whispered. Come on, you've been holding back all the pain, haven't you? Just let it out. Stop that, Mikoto muttered as tears began to well up. I'm not going to cry. Mikoto began sobbing into Asuna's shoulder, as Asuna only hugged her tighter. That's why you won't join my guild, said Asuna. You don't want people dying for your sake, when you don't even think you're worth it. Mikoto could barely even form syllables as her hot tears poured onto Asuna. I was never worth it. Don't you dare say that, said Asuna. If somebody cares about you enough to take a blade for you, then that means they knew well enough to think you were worth it. And you definitely are. Asuna, said Mikoto. Thank you. Both you and Kirito aren't like the other people in this game. I don't know how, but you both are like bright lights in a dim dungeon. Asuna looked around the cave for a minute. By the way, how did you find this place? It looks pretty bare and insignificant. Why would a game designer even bother putting this here? I don't know, said Mikoto, pointing out the chest. For whatever was in there? Seems like an awful amount of trouble for a hidden treasure chest, Asuna muttered, standing up and touching the wall. Suddenly, there was a glow, and part of the wall shifted with a giant boom. Out of nowhere appeared a massive, ginormous door. The door was shaped like a beautiful blossom on a giant green petal, with two Buddhist statues on either side. Asuna and Mikoto looked at each other with great fear. Asuna, is that what I think it is? It's the door to the main boss of this floor, said Asuna with a gulp. Oh my god, we're not even scheduled to finish mapping the entire forest dungeon till 3 weeks from now. It was so vast and... Mikoto stood up and took her sword from Asuna. You know what we have to do. Asuna nodded. We need to take a look inside and go right back out. We can't take a floor boss without significant backup, but we need to get a gist of what we're up against. Mikoto nodded. Asuna, in case we don't make it, I just wanted to say something. Yeah? Said Asuna. Thanks for telling me that I was worth it, Mikoto said. Asuna smiled. Can't fault me for telling the truth, can you? Now, slowly and carefully. Mikoto and Asuna pushed on either side of the door, slowly shoving the giant stone open. When the door was open, they both walked into the room. The environment was dark. Then lights lit up the place. It looked like the inside of a wondrous, beautiful temple, with colorful pillars and ancient, colorful-looking walls. In the middle of the room looked like a massive assortment of golden body parts. Hands, a face. Then something shifted in the atmosphere. The golden parts levitated into the air and put themselves together. Some sort of gooey purple darkness connected all the joints, all the parts, until a massive robotic golden statue with 6 arms formed. Its bottom half was rooted to the floor on a large circular pedestal, and it moved its arms like an Indian dancer. 2 of its massive metallic hands held giant disc-like blades. Its Buddhist appearance made it look a bit like Asura from mythology. In the center of its body was a massive veiny conversion of darkness into a large, pulsating red sphere that was almost like a heart the way it beat. A large icon appeared near the giant boss saying, Ancient Automaton, Koloktos. Whoa! Mikoto yelled. Move! Said Asuna, pulling onto Mikoto's arm. The twosome ran out of the room, yelling, before dropping to their knees right outside the entrance of the room, the stone doors slamming shut behind them. That was huge, said Mikoto. And from what I can see, with its big metal body, the damageable spot must be that heart thing in its chest. Yeah, that thing is going to be a defensive nightmare, said Asuna. If it can defend its soft spot with all those giant arms, then we're going to need some large numbers to keep those arms occupied, while highest damagers go after the heart. Not to mention those blades look throwable. Nasty range and versatile defense. Guess this is one meeting I'm not going to be late for, said Mikoto with a cheerful chuckle. Right, said Asuna, laughing as well. Wow, I didn't think I'd be seeing that boss again, though. What do you mean? Mikoto asked. That boss is actually from an older video game that was made by the Nintendo company years ago, said Asuna. I know some people who still play it. I heard from the SAO ads before the game came out that they would be adding a guest boss, but I didn't know it would be so soon. That's good, isn't it? Mikoto asked. That means you would know how to fight it. Not necessarily, said Asuna. The difference between Aincrad bosses and that of conventional video games is that they are way better at honing in and moving at targets, countering attacks and adapting to player fighting styles. Even with their default patterns, I'd say Koloktos' AI program was enhanced to suit the bosses of SAO, and therefore will be much more difficult. Mikoto paused. So, do you think anybody in SAO has ever played that old game you're talking about? Maybe. It would be good to ask around, said Asuna. Suddenly, Mikoto was nearly scared out of her equipment when the giant stone door suddenly started reopening on its own. Huh? Asuna drew her blade and pointed it around. Hey, who's there? Don't go in that room, you'll regret it. There was no answer, at least no audible answer. Suddenly, before Asuna and Mikoto knew what was going on, the two of them were suddenly pushed right into the room by a pair of hands. What? Mikoto yelled as she looked back. A dark figure in a familiar-looking hooded cloak waved at them, an escaped member of Laughing Coffin. In an instant, the massive door slammed shut. Mikoto ran to the door and hammered her fist on it. Help! Help! Can anybody hear us? Please, help us! Misaka! Asuna screamed. Look out! Mikoto leapt aside only just in time as a giant, massive disc blade flew out of nowhere and nearly sliced her head off. The blade flew back to Koloktos like a boomerang as he caught it, making intimidating clanking noises with its metal body. Mikoto and Asuna were trapped with the boss of the 66th floor, and there was no escape.